Catherine, Princess of Wales, whose life has brought her to the heart of the royal family's centuries-old tale, whose warmth and natural bonhomie shine through. She and William have grown and continue to grow into their role as modern senior royals. Catherine never looking out of place or as anything other than the future Queen of the United Kingdom.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel where the elegance of the British royals turns every glance into a headline and every smile into a strategy. Today, we step into a moment that left diplomats pausing mid-sentence and palace insiders whispering in awe. At a grand state banquet, chandeliers sparkled with light and tables groaned under the weight of silver and crystal. Yet, at the center of it all, came one subtle gesture from Catherine, Princess of Wales. In an instant, she transformed the atmosphere, softening even the stern resolve of the Amir of Qatar. He shifted from unyielding negotiator to open admirer, showering her with praise that echoed far beyond the gilded walls. Suddenly, the heavy demands those that had everyone in Whitehall holding their breath seemed to fade into the background. This was not about speeches or power plays. It was pure, effortless grace. A single move that spoke volumes about a woman who wears her crown with quiet command. But before we unpack this glittering evening and what it means for the future of royal diplomacy, hit that like button and subscribe. You know the drill, we dive deep so you stay ahead of the whispers. Let's roll back the clock to the weeks leading up to this unforgettable night. Catherine had been easing back into the spotlight after a year that tested her in ways few could imagine. Her return to public life was more than resilience. It was a masterclass in poise. Insiders whispered that she chose her appearances carefully, saving her energy for moments where her presence could truly matter. And this state visit from the Amir of Qatar was one such occasion. Announced with fanfare, it promised to strengthen ties between two nations bound by history and ambition. Yet behind the pageantry, tension brewed. The Amir arrived with expectations requests centered on investments and partnerships that could tip the balance against British interests. Palace sources revealed long days of preparation, where everything from seating charts to speech notes was scrutinized. William stood by her side, steady as ever. But it was Catherine who would command the spotlight, not through words, but through that single, unforgettable gesture. As carriages rolled into Buckingham Palace and guards snapped to attention, no one could have predicted just how profoundly she would alter the evening's course. This was diplomacy at its most personal. A reminder that sometimes the softest touch carries the greatest weight. The visit began, as always, with pomp. A ceremonial welcome at Horse Guards Parade. Catherine and William greeted the Amir and his wife Sheikha Jawahar under a crisp autumn sky. Dressed in a deep emerald coat, Catherine radiated warmth, her smile cutting through the formality like sunlight on frost. But this was merely the prelude. The true test, the state banquet awaited that evening. A glittering affair at Buckingham Palace, designed to seal goodwill with toasts and tradition. Sources close to the couple revealed Catherine poured herself into the preparations. She studied cultural notes, practiced Arabic phrases to honor Qatari traditions, and added small, respectful touches that spoke volumes without fanfare. William, ever the steady protector, kept the mood light during rehearsals, joking about ties and toast lengths to ease the tension, yet beneath the humor, the stakes were high. The Amir's agenda included talks on energy collaborations, deals promising economic boosts, but laced with strings attached. Advisors worried. His proposals leaned heavily toward Qatari advantage. His team arrived, armed with documents and determination. That is where Catherine stepped in, not as a dealmaker, but as the bridge, the human element who could connect worlds with empathy. The day unfolded with clockwork precision, a luncheon in the picture gallery filled with polite laughter, a brief pause to refresh, and then the evening crescendo. Catherine stepped into her gown of vision in ivory silk, embroidered with desert motifs, a subtle nod to her guest's heritage. As she adjusted her tiara, quiet resolve filled her reflection. This was not just another royal engagement. This was proof that diplomacy lives in connection, not contracts. King Charles placed a fond hand on her shoulder before the family gathered, the palace humming with anticipation. Little did anyone know that Catherine's instinct would shift the tide, transforming what could have been a tense dinner into a story of unexpected harmony. When the grand doors of Buckingham Palace swung open, the true magic began. Carriages glided to a halt, and the Amir, tall and composed in traditional dress, stepped forward with Sheikha Joaha at his side, her gown shimmering gold. Yet all eyes turned to Catherine, descending with William, her hand lightly resting on his arm, a portrait of synchronized elegance. The flash of cameras and the rustle of silk filled the hall. Staff lined the corridors, bowing as the party entered the ballroom. Its tables stretched in luminous rows, adorned with porcelain and crystal that caught the light like captured stars. Flowers from the palace gardens cascaded in arrangements of roses and orchids, subtle emblems of enduring friendship. Catherine took her seat near the head table, poised between William and a Qatari minister, her posture perfect, her gaze intent. Conversations flowed like waves. Casual talk of weather gave way to deeper exchanges about equestrian arts and children's charities. Across from King Charles, the Amir projected quiet authority, weaving requests into every carefully chosen word. Advisors tracked his tone, firm on issues like investment flows that could strain UK resources. It was diplomacy disguised as dinner, where every fork's clink felt like a chess move. Yet Catherine's presence cut through it. She listened, responded, and bridged divides with warmth. At one point, recalling a Qatari festival honoring family, she shared a story of her children's joy in similar traditions. Laughter rippled through the table, softening the room's edges. William caught her quiet nod of pride. Course after course arrived, from delicate connaps to roasted pheasant, building toward the evening's climax. The toasts. Insiders later admitted the tension was still there. But Catherine's grace was already bending the outcome in Britain's favor. The tension was palpable. One wrong note, and the evening's goodwill could unravel. Yet Catherine remained the steady flame. During a lull, she leaned in, her voice soft but clear, complimenting Sheikha Juahar on a brooch that carried a story of heritage. It was these threads, personal and sincere, that set the stage. No one expected that her simplest act would soon unravel the Emir's guarded stance, transforming demands into dialogue. As the chandeliers cast their golden glow and string quartets wove melodies through the air, the banquet reached its heart. King Charles rose first, delivering a speech stitched with warmth, partly in Arabic, honoring his guests and earning soft, thunderous applause. The Amir followed his words, gracious but edged with subtle reminders of mutual benefits, references echoing the expectations that had filled pre-visit memos. The room hung on every syllable. Silverware paused mid-air. Catherine sat poised, her necklace of pearls a quiet emblem of royal continuity, but her thoughts raced. She knew the Emir's reputation for shrewdness, his tendency to press for terms that favored sweeping Qatari outreach, often at the cost of British leverage. But she also knew that politics bowed to people. And so, as plates of pistachio mousse were set before them, she moved toward the moment that would define the night. Conversation at her table shifted to family legacies, a subject close to her heart. Sheikha Jawahar spoke with pride of her children's pursuits in art and sport, her eyes alight. Catherine mirrored that spark, sharing a light-hearted anecdote about Prince George's latest school project to an expected bridge of motherhood across cultures. The Emir leaned in, his expression softening, if only slightly. Then, in the fragile pause between laughter and the next toast, Catherine made her move. There was no grand flourish, no rehearsed line, just instinct. She reached across the table, not for a formal handshake, but to gently touch the back of Sheikha Jawar's hand, a fleeting connection, a gesture of sisterly solidarity. Her eyes then lifted to the Emir across the table, locking in a gaze of unguarded appreciation for the shared humanity of the evening. It was electric, subtle as a breeze, yet profound as a vow. The room's formality cracked. The Emir blinked, then smiled a real smile, stripped of diplomacy's mask. He raised his glass, not to policy, but to Catherine, murmuring admiration for her grace under the world's gaze. Whispers spread like wildfire among aides. The heavy demands softened into gentler suggestions. Catherine had not forced change. She had invited it with the power of a single human touch. Let's pause on that moment. In the history of royal gestures, it deserves its own chapter. It was not the morning's flawless curtsy before King Charles, nor the polished wave that greeted crowds outside. This was private, intimate, wrapped in the banquet's velvet glow. As Sheikha recounted a story of Qatari resilience, Catherine listened, tilting her head just so. Empathy etched into every line of her face. And then, as if pulled by an invisible thread, her hand reached out. Fingers brushed lightly, carrying warmth that transcended protocol. Without words, it said, "I see you. I value this." The Emir mid-thought on a proposal that had made British advisors uneasy. His eyes flicked to the touch, then back to her face and something shifted. Protocol demanded distance, yet here was connection. Raw, real, undeniable. He set down his fork with a deliberate clink, a punctuation mark in the hush. When he spoke again, his tone was lower, intimate, reserved for confidants. He praised her not for titles or crowns, but for her quiet strength, for the light she brought into the room, for embodying a spirit that turned strangers into allies. Sources later said the words poured out easily, admiration for her recovery, her devotion to family, her gift of making the monumental feel manageable. It was unscripted, unexpected, and powerful. And with that pivot, the thorny demands dissolved. Gone were the veiled pushes for unbalanced deals. In their place came nods to mutual exploration, flexibility where rigidity had stood. William, recognizing the shift, squeezed her hand under the tabola's silent cheer of pride. From his vantage point, King Charles lifted a brow in quiet approval. Aides scribbled furiously, recalibrating their notes overnight. Catherine, as always, deflected praise with humor, steering the mood back to laughter and shared joys like children's giggles across cultures. But the effect lingered, rippling outward. Insiders called it her superpower, the ability to disarm with dignity. In a world defined by hard lines, she drew soft curves, proving once more why she is the monarchy's most potent ambassador. The aftermath unfolded like a ballet measure, graceful, yet laced with genuine surprise. As coffee service began, silver pots steaming, the Emir's demeanor was transformed. Where he had once leaned back, arms crossed in assertion, he now leaned forward, gesturing openly, palms up in invitation. Conversation drifted from ledgers to legacies, from deals to dreams. He even sought Catherine's views on youth initiatives, and her balance of public duty with private joys. Drawing him further into her orbit, palace photographers captured the change. A rare image of the Emir gesturing animatedly toward Catherine, his eyes bright with unusual warmth. By the time the banquet closed with the receiving line, the heavy demands had become footnotes, overshadowed by new commitments to collaboration, framed in mutual respect. Advisors, who had braced for prolonged pushback, finally exhaled. One source quipped, she turned the tide with a touch no negotiations required. William, beaming beside her, later told confidants how her intuition always found the human thread. Sheikah, too, pulled Catherine aside, whispering thanks for the solidarity that made the evening unforgettable. As the guests spilled into the moonlit palace gardens for after-dinner cordials, laughter drifted across the night era, striking contrast to the tension that had hung before. Media outlets soon ran with headlines of harmony, crediting royal hospitality for the breakthrough. But insiders knew the truth. It was Catherine's gesture that unlocked the evening. It echoed her past triumphs, charming world leaders with stories of her children, but this was different. This was personal, a victory shaped by resilience. Through her own challenges, Catherine had sharpened her gift, emerging not just stronger, but wiser in the art of connection. The Emir departed the next morning with handshakes all around, his posture lighter, his tone warmer, his stance forever changed. Praise for Catherine echoed in the farewell speeches, a public nod that only amplified the private pivot already underway. Back in Windsor, the family gathered quietly, the weight of the evening giving way to warmth over tea and stories. George and Charlotte listened wide-eyed as Mama retold moments of the banquet, their imaginations lit by her graceful touch. To them, it felt like magic. To William, it was confirmation that his partner in life was now also his partner in legacy. To the crown, it was victory not only for the monarchy, but for the woman who wears it with heart. Step back, and the night becomes something far greater than ceremony. It was a moment sewn into the very fabric of Catherine's journey, a thread in her quiet revolution. After months of stepping away to heal, her return was not accidental. It was deliberate, paced, intentional, every appearance a statement of strength, every smile a reminder that her influence has only grown in absence. This banquet proved she is no longer simply a consort, but a central figure of soft power whose presence alone changes the temperature in the room. Insiders whisper that Catherine is a student not only of protocol, but of people. She studies faces, senses, silences, anticipates needs with uncanny precision. That single gesture to the Amir was not random, it was a reflection of years of lessons. The same instincts that once helped her rally a nation in difficult times were now at work in the grandest halls. Sympathy became solidarity, tension became trust. For William, it underscored the strength of their partnership, his protective glances through the evening speaking of unity rather than distance, and for their children, tucked away safely at home. Stories of Mama's grace would one day inspire, teaching them that real influence stems not from power, but from kindness. The impact rippled far beyond the banquet room. The Emir's softened stance, his earlier demands fading like smoke, revealed a truth diplomats rarely admit. Catherine's blend of tradition and modernity is disarming, even to the most resolute. Sources close to the talks suggest her presence alone helped open doors to more balanced negotiations in the days that followed. Yet even in the shadow of geopolitics, the beauty of the moment lay in something deeply personal later that night. In a rare, unguarded exchange with aides, Catherine confessed the gesture had reminded her of holding her children's hands during life's storms. It was a grounding force, she said, one that tethered her to something real amidst the grandeur. That reflection humanized the evening, peeling back the layers of spectacle to reveal the truth that royals crave connection as much as anyone else. Ever the watchful patriarch reportedly sent Catherine a private note of thanks, calling her the true star of the evening. Even Queen Camilla, watching from a distance, is said to have nodded in quiet respect. For both, it was a moment of recognition. The monarchy was evolving before their very eyes. No longer was it defined by pomp and distance. With Catherine at its empathetic center, it became about substance, connection, and a quieter kind of strength to the world. Britain appeared not as a nation clinging to its past, but as a country guided by grace. For a family that has endured grief, scrutiny, and glare, moments like this are more than symbolic, they are lifelines. They reaffirm the crown's place in the modern age, proving that the monarchy can adapt without losing itself. And at the center of this adaptation is Catherine, enduring as the people's princess, not through grand speeches or rigid displays, but through gestures that feel deeply, profoundly human. As the curtains closed on that enchanting evening, one truth rang louder than applause. Catherine did more than redirect the course of a banquet, she redefined royal influence itself. Her gentle power bent wills without breaking spirits. From a single touch came a cascade of goodwill, the Emir's praise swelling into a chorus that drowned out discord. His earlier demands dissolved into dust, replaced with admiration. It was a night where elegance met empathy, where tradition danced hand in hand with tomorrow. For William and Catherine, it was another stone in the foundation of their legacia, reminder that they are not simply heirs to history, but authors of its next chapter. Their children will grow knowing that duty is not a burden but a gift, carried with a smile rather than a scepter. And for the monarchy itself, it whispered of renewal, a crown lighter upon the brow, but heavier with hope. Insiders now suggest that Catherine's approach may serve as a blueprint for the monarchy's future engagements. The lesson is simple but profound. Connection is the strongest currency in diplomacy. And yet, amid the glitter and grandeur, it is the simplicity of the moment that lingers most. One touch, one human connection, one act of kindness changing everything. So, what do you think of Catherine's quiet magic? Is this proof the royals are evolving into weavers of warmth in a cold arena? Or is it just another brilliant chapter in her story? Share your thoughts below. We read them all. Don't forget to like if Her Grace moved you, and subscribe for more unmissable royal revelations. Until then, keep listening to the whispers. They always carry the truth. Always carry the truth.